My fiancé lets his business partner treat me poorly because of the money he brings in, but when I started bringing and giving him just as much, he still lets his business partner treat me like piss, and now I'm not sure I want to get married anymore. Posted by you/business overlord 2. Sorry if this is long, Reddit, but understanding my problem requires some background info. My fiancé, Nick, 30M, and I, 25F, have been together for 3 years, engaged for 1. I'm a grad student who's pretty broke and works odd jobs to pay for school and life. He's a mid-level executive pulling in 6 figures, works from home, and has a ton of downtime and freedom. Recently, he created an app that allows him to produce these digital goods he can sell online. I can't provide more detail. He completely controls production and distribution of his goods, and the only cost is essentially maintaining the software. The stuff practically runs itself now at zero cost to him. There is huge demand for these goods in a small online community, and a few months ago Nick found someone there he could trust, Joe. Joe sells the goods for Nick, who doesn't like doing it himself, and takes a 50% commission. The money is good enough that you could leave your day job doing it, although neither of them has. Ever since he built the app, Nick has been trying to get me to sell these goods for him as well. He likes when I work from home so I can share his lifestyle with him, plus the money is better than a regular job. After a while, I agreed and started to sell. Initially, Nick asked for 10% of what I made, which was cool. Then I noticed he started getting unhappy with how I was selling, but unreasonably so. He'd start an argument if I gave a customer a $2 discount on a $70 order. Apparently, Joe was unhappy that I was selling on his turf and was complaining to Nick about it, and Nick was taking it out on me in turn. Keep in mind, there are more than enough goods and customers for Nick to hire 5 to 6 more sellers on top of me and Joe. The arguments continued, selling became unbearable for me, and Joe's complaints were just unreasonable. But Nick kept saying that I was the one who had to accommodate Joe and fix things. Finally, I told Nick that I felt like he prioritized Joe over me, and he replied, "Well, yes, I get 50% of what he makes, so he's a more important seller than you. I have to prioritize him." That hurt my feelings, and of course I wanted the arguments to end, so I offered to give 50% of everything I sold to Nick as well so that I could be treated equally as a salesperson. He agreed. Of course, Joe still wasn't happy. His complaints continued, that I was stealing his customers and undercutting him. I wasn't. I came up with a fair solution of matching our prices, to which he agreed, but then he actively started undermining me as a seller. He would tell me he was selling something at $50, I'd follow suit, then I'd find out he was selling it at $20, that kind of crap. Anyway, I told Nick about this, and he essentially told me the same thing as before. Joe was a priority, and he was tired of dealing with our drama. He also said that Joe was an established member of the community, he had a large footprint as a seller who'd been doing it years before me, and he was irreplaceable. Joe finally came clean and told Nick that he was unhappy that I was selling it all. He didn't want to take money out of his mouth and put it into hers, and therefore he didn't want to have any sort of sales system with me, even though it was his complaints that led to that. Nick thought his feelings were reasonable and started telling me that he didn't have to be my employer, that he owned the whole thing and could shut it down anytime. He said he wanted both Joe and me to be happy, and that I should work with him on finding a solution, ignoring that Joe said he wanted me out and was obviously going to sabotage any solution again. I was so disgusted and tired of the whole thing that I quit selling yesterday. Joe is happy, Nick is happy that he doesn't have to deal with the drama anymore. But I'm resentful toward Nick. I don't know if I'm in the wrong, but it's making me rethink our wedding. Edit, I'm mostly unhappy because Nick treated me poorly. He always took Joe's side and made Joe's problems my problems. He straight up told me I wasn't as important because I wasn't giving him as much money, and even when I gave him 50%, I still wasn't. /relevant comments. Commenter. Anyway, I told Nick about this and he essentially told me the same thing as before. Joe was a priority and he was tired of dealing with our drama. Poor ignorant little Nick. What he calls drama that he's tired of dealing with is actually his job duties that he's obligated to perform as founder/owner/manager of the company. I sarcastically and condescendingly say poor ignorant little Nick because I'm pretty irritated upon reading your post. The dude is super wealthy from his inventions and job, owns his own app, hires 2 salespeople, and doesn't even realize that he has to manage the salespeople. He hired Joe, then later he hired you and gave you part of Joe's territory. Maybe his business decision is that it's okay to split up territories, in which case he needs to tell Joe to shut the F up and get over it. The company is growing and sales reps will have to get along with other sales reps. Or maybe he wants to give each sales rep their own exclusive territory, in which case he needs to spell that out clearly to both of you so that you don't overlap with each other. Either way, it's his decision to make and execute, And he is way out of line and an ignorant fool who obviously has never run a business before for trying to push it off on you two to figure out for yourselves and calling it drama. Drama. Lol. It's business, dude. Business. Tell him to grow up and run his business like an adult. Ops response. Thank you, I'm really irritated and resentful as well. Nick refused to tell Joe to cut the crap and basically told me that I'd have to be the one to come up with a compromise. Then, when Joe sabotaged the compromise, Nick still sided with him. I'm so mad right now. Nick's being all cute and affectionate because he knows I'm mad, but I can't let go of the resentment. I just don't know if that's enough to call off a wedding, but I really want to. Commenter. I just don't know if that's enough to call off a wedding, but I really want to. If you want to call off the wedding, then that feeling in itself is enough justification to call off the wedding. It's actually the best and most important justification. Ops response. What would you do in my shoes? Commenter. I actually am engaged too, lol. I would sit him down and say, Nick, I'd like to talk about your treatment of me as an employee and what that means for our marriage. I'm actually so affected by this that I don't want to go through with the marriage until the issue is resolved. That should sit him down and make him open to talking with you. If it doesn't, then that's a sign that he doesn't want to go through with the marriage either, if he's not willing to have a conversation in order to save it. So then tell him how he was avoiding his responsibility as a manager to either divvy up sales territories or explain to his sales reps that they're both operating within the same territory. And instead of treating it as a business matter, he made it a personal matter and made it about personalities and who was whining or complaining and such. And in making it a personal matter, he also chose Joe over you. Be honest with your concerns and doubts, and give him the opportunity to reassure you. If he's a good and worthy and kind partner, then as soon as he hears your concerns about his devotion to you, he should immediately wrap his arms around you and tell you that you mean the world to him and he loves you more than anything, or any other equivalent action and statement. If he doesn't, there's a major problem. Ops response. I'm very willing to try this. I think I'll wait a few days, though, because right now I don't think I could get the words out without bursting into tears. Update 1 day later. Keeping all your advice in mind, I sat down with Nick last night to have a talk about the venture and Joe. At first, he was defensive. He accused me of entering the business and demanding to change the system Joe and I created. He said I'd been acting like an entitled girlfriend asking for him and Joe to cater to my whims. I was so baffled by this version of events that I made him discuss each event chronologically. He tried to put the blame on me, but I wasn't having any of it. Eventually, he admitted that everything was fine with me until Joe started asking for changes. That was the only time I started coming up with proposed changes to the system because neither he nor Joe were coming up with any but kept telling me something needed to change. Then he finally explained why he'd been acting the way he has. So it turns out that Nick doesn't view Joe as an employee the way I was, but views him as an equal business partner who was there with him from the beginning and has equal say in the business. That was why he was irreplaceable. He apparently told Joe that I would only be selling temporarily, which is not what he told me. Naturally, Joe started getting miffed when it turned out I was there to stay, especially when I started selling a blizzard of goods, in Nick's words. He hadn't expected me to be so good at selling. Nick apologized, said he handled the whole affair very poorly, and said that I wasn't to blame after all. I accepted his apology, but I told him that none of it had been a reason to treat me badly and that it showed that I was still not a priority. I told him that I haven't been a priority since the beginning of our relationship and that marriage was not on the table anymore because I really need to be a team with my husband. He went quiet and then started talking about how he feels like he has to cater to me all the time, keep me entertained, and that my life revolves around him. I was really surprised by this because I lead a normal life, school, work, etc., and detected a hint of contempt because I'm not entirely consumed by work like he is. After a bit of prodding, it turns out that Nick is one of those people who prefer living by themselves, having 30-hour coding marathons alone, then passing out for 15. Any kind of relationship where you see each other more than 3x a week is too much work for him, essentially. That isn't conducive to any relationship I want to have, and that hint of contempt really sealed the deal for me. He thinks I'm too high maintenance, in attention and effort, and I think he's not meeting my minimum requirement for a boyfriend, let alone a fiancé. We expressed these things to one another. I did mention the horse crap distribution of labor, too. At the end of the discussion, I told him the wedding was on indefinite hold and that we would be living separately from now on. He seemed bummed out but accepted it. I think he really feels that our relationship can work that way. He seemed pretty damn chipper this morning. I know I need to leave him immediately. The problem is that we have a 2-month-long international trip coming up in a week that I cannot cancel, so I want to make that as painless as possible, That trip has been 10 years in the making and entails family members I haven't seen in a long time. After that, I'll move out and let him know it's over. Edit on why the trip is necessary. This is actually a very involved trip across a couple of continents. We have a shared apartment in Europe that we were planning on emptying and ending the lease on. We're both needed for that. The second leg of the trip is to my native country, and he's not needed for that. However, he's already paid thousands of dollars in non-refundable airfare for it and has been excited for months, so I'm not about to yank that out from under him. Our relationship may be ending, but I don't hate him. Honestly, he knows what me moving out means. He's a smart guy. I've always made it clear that living together and getting married is important to me, so he knows. He's also someone who avoids unpleasant conversations like the plague, so it won't be awkward. This trip is making the best of things, I suppose. Top/relevant comments. Commenter. Honestly, Nick sounds like a highly avoidant person in terms of his attachment. He doesn't want to get close to you or any other partner, prioritizes his needs/space over any of your needs/desires, and likely will always be a selfish, cold, emotionally withholding person. He's a bad boyfriend, and he'd make a terrible husband. You did the right thing in getting out before you're shackled with this man for life. Ops response. And it stings to admit this now, but for a long time I felt like the special butterfly who got Nick to settle down and propose, even though he left a long string of ditched girlfriends behind. I used to worry I'd join their ranks, but he seemed so ready and willing to commit, and then that ring showed up. Live and learn. Commenter 2. Any kind of relationship where you see each other more than 3x a week is too much work for him, essentially. So basically marriage would never work out for him? Good luck with that, Nick. I suspect he's going to get dumped in the future too for similar reasons. He's 30 and in no position to make the changes necessary to be a decent partner to anyone aside from something casual. Good for you. Do what you have to. If you do take him on this trip, I hope he doesn't take it as an opportunity to rehash everything and make you miserable or attempt to convince you to stay. Personally, I'd find a way to cancel his plane tickets and break up now just to avoid further drama and disappointment. Ops response. Basically, marriage to someone like me would never work out for him, no. Who knows, he might find a female version of himself. I hope that he does. I'm not worried about the trip because Nick is great at avoiding in-depth conversations about unpleasant things. I'm usually the instigator of those kinds of talks, so it'll be alright. It might even be fun, given that I won't be expecting him to be a decent fiancé anymore. Nick is a great friend. Commenter 3. Who knows, he might find a female version of himself. I hope that he does. Hilariously enough, it wouldn't work out with a female version of himself either. Avoidant/avoidant couples rarely stick with one another. After all, when neither of them is inclined to push for romantic intimacy and closeness, they rarely even see each other enough to commit to each other. Sadly, avoidant people like Nick usually end up with people high in attachment anxiety. Basically, people who are willing to chase them around to get love/commitment/partnership, even when avoidants like Nick push them away. Ops response. And I might have been high in attachment anxiety. Definitely something to think about while I'm single. I know the penny started to drop a couple of months ago when I started noticing that I essentially gave all the affection. I'd been happy because he'd been getting really good at accepting my kisses and cuddles. He even started giving me hugs and kisses on the head. Spontaneously. But then I realized I wasn't getting enough real affection that I didn't initiate. Then I noticed he never helped out around the house, that I'd have to beg for massages that would only last 5 minutes while he got regular ones. Then the Joe crap happened. It was my come to Jesus moment. Anyway, thanks for the insight. I will try to work on that before starting a new relationship.